Once I was hungry, I went to Shah Rukh Khan's house using our college connection. He only knew how to make omelets.
Shul was being made, and the film critic asked Ramu that you got this Pirangi type kid. Does he even know what Shul means? This is when Anurag turns to him and says, like, this is Trishul.
And this is true. I remember Karan Johar giving an interview and calling me a psychopath. Till then, we had not met.
Right.
So Rajpal Yadav was leaving Bombay out of desperation, going back to Jabalpur. I convinced him to stay back. I said, I'll give you one scene role in Shul. Rajpal Yadav के बगल में दूसरा एक्टर था, पतला दुबला सा, was नवाजुद्दीन सिद्दीकी.
Right.
तो नवाजुद्दीन सिद्दीकी said, सर मुझे भी कोई काम मिल जाएगा. मैंने कहा यार एक ही रोल है, किसी एक को मिल सकता है, इसमें छोटा रोल कर लूंगा. तो मैंने कहा मैं कोई डायलॉग नहीं, कुछ नहीं, वेटर का रोल है, इसे मैं कर लूंगा. मैंने कहा पैसे नहीं मिलेंगे. ये सर एक दिन के खाने का हो जाएगा ना, मैं कर लूंगा. भट्ट साहब would get me to write films. And Mukesh Bhatt is very miserly when it comes to giving money. So I went and I said, I'm walking out. Rather be a carpenter, but I won't work in this office. The voice says, और महेश भट्ट ने जो पैसे दिए थे वो के भूल गए.
તાજા સમાચાર તમારી ભાષામાં મેળવવા માટે ડાઉનલોડ કરો ગુજરાતી મિડ ડેની એપ.
Hello and welcome to Sit with Hitlist, our totally unscripted and in the case of podcast, completely unedited conversation series where we feature what we believe are the top names in terms of most talented people in Bombay film industry. Of course, we don't even need to introduce our guests. Certainly not introduce our guest today, purely because if you don't know who he is, then what are you doing watching this in the first place? What am I doing interviewing him in the first place? Ladies and gentlemen, writer-director Anurag Kashyap. Thank you so much, Anurag, for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Mayank. Thank you so much. Always good to see you.
This is something that I've always wanted to ask you because it came up in a conversation or interview I once did with Imtiaz. And this is from back in the 90s when Imtiaz, I'm presuming, was in college. He was in the Dramatic Society or that he had founded for Hindu College back then. And there was a TV serial being made at the time. And, I think someone approached him to sort of cast for that TV show. And the first time in his life that he ever saw a portfolio for those who don't know, and I think everyone knows, was a bunch of pictures that you gave him of you in various poses. Yeah. I don't know whether Cop was one of them. So that's a fascinating story. The first time the Imtiaz ever saw portfolio
back
was
in 1992. 1992 in Delhi, Imtiaz was still in Hindu. And 1992 in Delhi, I had just discovered theatre and I was doing a lot of theatre. And when you start doing theatre, then people tell you, I met a guy who said, you need to get pictures clicked if you want work. And so I got my pictures clicked. So there's a company that used to do that. We'll make portfolio for 3,000 rupees, which is a lot of money. So I collected 3,000 rupees and got some pictures clicked. And those pictures I gave him, that was my only portfolio I made, which I came to Bombay. And I didn't know what to do because since I was doing theatre, I thought acting is a way into the film industry, but I wasn't very clear about what I want to do with acting. And I started doing a lot of acting on stage and I did some films. What Imtiaz did not tell you was one of the first films that I did as an actor in the lead role. My co-actor was Imtiaz Ali. So we were both co-actors in a film, the only copy of which is with Z. Because Z premiered that film on 26th January 1994.
What is this film that nobody's heard of? That stars
nobody wants to talk about it. We don't want to talk about it. Imtiaz will kill me. If you ever try to go into the C library and find it out and put it out there, Imtiaz will come after you.
Were you guys the lead role? Were you playing the lead roles in that film, or was it like a walk-on part sort of thing?
We were both the lead roles. We were the lead roles.
No way. So there is some work to be done to look for. The other thing that I saw, because we're walking down memory lane, is a picture that you posted on Twitter, I think a few days ago, which was from, if I'm not mistaken, the Mahurat shot of Panch.
The Mahurat shot of Panch, yeah. The whole world is in there in that picture.
And which year would that be, Anurag?
This was 2000, I think. This was early 2000.
Which is your first film as a director, which obviously you can't have an anniversary for because the movie never released. So there is no question of celebrating 20 years of March in that sense. But what really struck my eye, Anurag, when I was looking at that picture, is this guy wearing a cap in the second row to the right-hand corner. And that's Vikramaditya Motwane, if I'm not mistaken.
There's Vikramaditya Motwane, there's Hansal Mehta in that picture.
Was Vikram working on Panch? Was he part of the crew?
Yeah. So Vikram was also one of the sound designers of Panch. And Vikram, because I think was I had to shoot a film, and you can't shoot a film without songs. So I had songs, and I was so scared of shooting a song. I didn't know how to shoot a song. The one person that I knew how to shoot songs was Sanjay Leela Bansali, and Vikram was Sanjay Leela Bansali's assistant. So in my head, I said, since he's Bansali's assistant, he knows how to shoot songs. So Vikram had 2 credits on the film: the director of songs and the sound designer.
So he shot all the songs in Panch.
Yeah, he's the song director. And that was Bosco. That was so many people. Abbas Tyrewala was the lyrics writer. Vishal Bhardwaj did the music. Bosco Caesar's first film as a choreographer. Nati's first film as a cameraman. Vasik's first film as an art director, Vasik Khan. Aarti Bajaj's first film as an editor. It was a first for many people.
You know, Anurag, I know a lot of people, and they rightly consider you one of the finest we've had. But I think your greatest contribution outside of filmmaking, which is obvious and that is there to be seen, is how you created an ecosystem of writers, of technicians, of actors in Warsaw, where you currently are. There wasn't much going on in terms of a scene. I mean, before you, Ram Gopal Verma, to a huge extent, who you worked with initially, are there stories that you remember of people who you bumped into either on the street or somewhere else in an office? Is there a favorite story? Are there favorite stories?
I have loads of stories of people, how I met them and things like that. Like Sriram was always a very lazy, reluctant. He was a very good filmmaker, but a lazy, reluctant person. And I was such a massive fan of Raman Raghav and the way Sriram worked. He made Ranga Billa. And I used to write for Shivam Nair. And they gave me my first credit because I was very happily working without credit. I would do anything as long as I was working. For a script written by Shiv Subramaniam that I rewrote, they gave me credit because it was not supposed to give me credit because it was understood. I was taking somebody else's script and rewriting it because I said I had to take on it. So them letting me generously allow me to give that take. So that was what Auto Narayan was, which paved way for Satya in a way. Very strange story was a film that never got made. A script that I wrote officially first time, which was supposed to be made into a film for Kamal Swaroop as a director called Nagarajan.
Okay.
I found this actor who I was a fan of from stage called Manoj Bajpayee. And I put Manoj Bajpayee and the film together. The film never happened. But Manoj was going through such a hard struggle at that time. Nobody had shown that kind of faith in him. So when Ram Gopal Verma was shooting Daud with him, he asked Manoj Bajpayee that I want to make a film with you. I have this kind of film. Do you know any writer who can do this? So Manoj, without having seen any written work, took me to Ram Gopal Verma to meet him. There's stories like that. There's another amazing story is one of my most favorite stories, like how Mahesh Bhatt and Mukesh Bhatt used to be. Bhatt Saab was literally before Ram Gopal Verma happened, before anybody happened. He picked me up and he was like, "This guy is very talented," and like he would get me to write films. And Mukesh Bhatt, is very miserly when it comes to giving money.
Yeah.
And that struggle is so much that it was. And my closest friend at that time in the industry was the kindest to me. One of the people who were the nicest and kindest to me was Pooja Bhatt. And I would go and tell her. Pooja said, "Just go talk to dad." So I went and I said, "I'm walking out. I'm not working in this film." And Mukesh Bhatt said, "Aisa kya hai?" Because he would change in front of Mahesh ji. This is why you're doing this. He said, "I'll rather be a carpenter, but I won't work in this office." And Bhatt Saab didn't say a word to. I was like waiting for him to say something. And I left the office. I go downstairs and the watchman tells me, "Bhatt Saab ne bola 1 minute rukne ko." So I waited. And the whole thing was because I was desperate. I had to pay rent and I didn't have rent money. Mahesh Bhatt came down and he gave me 10,000 in my hands. At that time, 94, 95, as a wad of cash. And he says, "Go pay your rent and do not change as a person." And for me, that's very overwhelming. So what happened was, years later, I made Black Friday. And it was banned in India. It was showing at a festival in England. And I was talking about how I walked out on Mukesh Bhatt. And I did tell this, and from the crowd, the voice says, "और महेश भट्ट ने जो पैसे दिए थे वो भूल गए?" And Bhatt Saab was sitting in the crowd. And I got so emotional. So I had incidents like that, which was very funny. I remember Amit Khanna, when I walked out of this TV series that Plus Channel was doing with them, and Amit Khanna drove me in a car and saying that, "Why are you leaving it?" I say, "I want to do this film that I really believe in." He says, "What film is this?" It's Satya. He says, "We're getting so much money." And I said, I don't know. I just want to do Satya. It was such a instinctive thing. And I had to write that film. At that time, I was cast in the play called Androcles and the Lion by Nasiruddin Shah. So Nasir was also very upset. I walked out of everything to do Satya. So I have those stories. I remember one actor friend of mine told me there's this very good actor who's struggled so much and given up, and he's now going back to Bombay. And can you stop him? And that time I was also doing casting for Ram Gopal Verma. So that actor was Rajpal Yadav.
Right.
So Rajpal Yadav was leaving Bombay out of desperation, going back to Jabalpur. I convinced him to stay back. I said, I'll give you one scene role in Shul. Rajpal Yadav के बगल में दूसरा एक्टर था, पतला दुबला सा, was Nawazuddin Siddiqui.
Right.
तो नवाजुद्दीन सिद्दीकी said, सर मुझे भी कोई काम मिल जाएगा. मैंने कहा यार एक ही रोल है, किसी एक को मिल सकता है, इसमें छोटा रोल कर लूंगा. तो मैंने कहा मैं कोई डायलॉग नहीं, कुछ नहीं, वेटर का रोल है, इसे मैं कर लूंगा. मैंने कहा पैसे नहीं मिलेंगे. ये सर एक दिन के खाने का हो जाएगा ना, मैं कर लूंगा. So that's how Rajpal Yadav and Nawazuddin I met. And Rajpal Yadav turned that one scene into his scene, which led him to do Jungle.
Right.
And Nawazuddin Siddiqui did a small role of a waiter, which you still can see in the film. He comes and takes orders. And उसमें भी वो अपना कुछ करता है.
Have you made these random cameos in films where we can spot you before you became a director? Given that you worked in so many of these films.
Gang, lots of films. You should see Gang, Mazhar Khan's Gang. One day I remember I get a message from somebody saying that, were you there in Gang? So I remember I was there in Gang. Gang is that Mazhar Khan movie with Nana Patekar, Jackie Shroff, everybody. So I have a scene with Nana Patekar and everything in Gang. And I have this very thin cop. Again a cop. I'm again a cop in a Hollywood film called The Maharaja's Daughter back in 93. I was cast in the film. I was too young. I did not even have a mustache. With Burt Young. Burt Young, you remember from Rocky. Sylvester Stallone's trainer. I had a scene with him.
Right.
I played a cop in that Hollywood film as well. So I have lots of cop roles. And Gang, I played a cop with, the scene was with Nana Patekar, Javed Jafri. It was a scene, I'm an honest cop who they're manipulating. You can spot me in Gang.
You got paid for it. It's a proper role in the sense of, you've been cast through an audition and those processes.
No, Gang, I was cast through, I was promised money. I was never paid that money.
अच्छा पैसा भी नहीं मिला.
Gang, I think nobody got paid. Even the stars didn't get paid. Everybody did it for the love of Mazhar Khan. That's why the film took 10 years to get made. I have stories when I used to carry Bhatt Saab's books, standing on the set of, I don't know, what was the Yash Johar film, he did Duplicate or something. And standing outside and so intimidated. Shah Rukh I knew from university days. I'd seen him, so I was never intimidated by him in that way. But standing by the set, the grandness of the set, and Bhatt Saab Katha, and I was carrying his books. And I was hungry and I had no money, I was standing outside. I remember Yash Johar seeing me, and Yash Johar was such a unlike any producer that I've met ever since or even before. He's just the most kindest, most amazing human being. He sensed I was hungry. And he came to me and he came and asked me, he says, एक काम करो, किताब रखो साइड में, कहीं भागी नहीं जा रही है, पहले चलो बैठो खाना खाओ. And he took me aside and he put me down and he fed me. So those little things that you remember for life. Once I was hungry, I just walked into Jannat. I went to Shah Rukh Khan's house. Because using our college connection, I remember him feeding me. He only knew how to make omelets. I've done things like that.
I mean, this is around the time that you already had a mansion in Bandstand?
Yeah. This is before No Smoking. This is after I had made Black Friday and all. I was in very bad shape. This is after my marriage had broken up. I was literally homeless. I was struggling for lots of things. And 2 films were banned, Black Friday and Panch.
Personally, for you, Anurag, you've been around in the film industry in a sense. You're a film industry kid now because you were a kid when you moved in here, when you moved to Bombay. There was a certain perception that people had in terms of you as a person because you were extremely vocal. You would blog, you would not care about what you're saying about whoever. The consequences be damned. In all that time, I think, how did they perceive you initially? My favorite story of yours, Anurag, that you told me a long, long time ago, and I don't know if you remember you telling me this, was this one time that you were in the set with Ram Gopal Verma, and there was a film critic, and there weren't that many film critics back in the day. I think this is around the time Shul was being made. And the film critic asked Ramu that you got this Firangi type kid, does he even know what Shul means? And I must let the viewers know, this is when Anurag turns to him and says that, this is Trishul and this is Shul. That's just audacity of youth. But that hasn't changed so much about you over years, or has it?
I was an angry person at that time. Anybody who knew me didn't mind me. Like anyone who knew me, because what happened actually was when I was blogging, so I had fought on the set of Mission Kashmir, and like if you talk to Vidu, he never like kind of ran away from me or thought that I was this angry person. I would get angry, but people also knew that I was childlike. And it's the blogging period that when people did not know me and I went after everything that I thought was mediocre or nepotistic or everything. I was literally that time everybody thought I'm this person. Like Karan, I remember Karan Johar giving an interview and calling me a psychopath. Until then we had not met.
Right.
And so he called me a psychopath, and I called him a fat kid who still thinks he's the same kid in school or something. No, we remember we had this fight in midday. Actually, I remember saying something about Anil Kapoor in an interview which became the headline and all that kind of a thing. But it was more because of the blogs, and I had no clue that my blogs that I was writing, I thought I was addressing to these personal, private people, would start getting picked up by the newspapers. And that created a persona which actually was not me, but it helped me a lot in my career.
In what
because
sense?
people would because people left me alone. If I would do a film, people said इससे argue नहीं करना चाहिए. So people left me alone a lot. It also helped me build the kind of films that I did. And the greatest thing that blog did to me was it made me meet so many like-minded people. So if you look at all the filmmakers who matter today in some way or the other internationally, started on that blog. Chaitanya Tamhane, Vasan Bala, Neeraj Ghewan, Divakar Banerjee was there even before his first film had come out. There was Sneha Khanwalkar on that blog. There was, I don't know, there's just so many, Anand Gandhi, so many people. And so many people quit their job. Vasan quit his job, I remember. Neeraj Ghewan quit his job, came and met me, started working with me. There was a community that it made, and which empowered us and started to just started making things possible for us. Suddenly, these people came, they started working with me. I started raising money for them. People started putting in money. We raised money on Facebook. We started making the kind of films, and my office space became like a dharamshala. People would stay there, live there. The only thing we could provide was food. So it was how things started to change. It was an organic process, and it started by accident.
And the accident being the blog.
Accident being me discovering internet. Like I bought my first laptop and I discovered internet. So what do you do when you discover internet? You first Google yourself. So I Googled myself. And it landed me on a page where people were talking about my film. And they were all talking about me with incorrect information. So I got onto that page to correct the information. I was like this, because I was going through a phase where everybody was saying things which I was not. I was very angry. I was like, but that's not true. This is who are you? How do you know so much? So, because I am Anurag Kashyap. And then I realized that was the blog. That was the blog called PFC. And then she said, why don't you sir start talking about your things? So I said, okay, fine, I'll talk. I thought there were just 20 people who would read what I write. Till it got picked up by the media, and then suddenly it changed.
Right. I think one of the things that happened as a result, Anurag, and I see this so often in Yari Road, Versova area now. I mean, I've met this one kid who calls you Papa, and maybe that is a word that a lot of people use, and they say Papa.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, and there's a whole cult worship which is very close to either mafia, which would be Bhai, not Papa, and like even like politics in a certain way, like they could do anything for you. I mean, have you met these kids? Do you come across them? Are they standing outside your office?
Yeah, they are. That's why I kind of hide away. I always disappear because it started with me doing casting for Ram Gopal Verma. And what happened was Ramu used to always work with newcomers. And Ramu ji he's the one who brought in, say, Atul Sabarwal, apna kya naam hai, Shriram Raghavan made ek Hasina thi there, Shimit Amin, so many, Abbas Tyrwala, so many people found their voices there. So what happened was, when Ramuji started working with stars, still was constantly discovering new actors. With Gangs of Wasipur, the same thing started around me with actors. And what happened with that blog was, when Udan came out, and Vasan made his first film and Gevan made his first film. So they would all tell stories about how we met. So whole lot of engineers and doctors started dropping out. So they thought this is the way to do it. I was the outsider who made his way in on his own terms. So everybody started coming to me. There's a whole lot of mass kind of infiltration that happened. I remember when QT started, all those guys, the first videos started with me. AIB's first podcast was with me. So every time anybody would start out,
Right.
I would be there. And also because I used to do it just because I used to love them. Nothing, if you really love films, you'll do it. Yeah. People do it the world over. Martin Scorsese, who we think is God, gives more time to filmmakers from all over the world than I would do to filmmakers here. So that for me is that was the biggest learning that I had. I'm saying how this man who's so busy and so much more larger in status than all of us constantly makes time for young filmmakers and watches their films and gives feedback and writes letters to them which are like for trophies for us. He's done that to Gevan, he's done that to me, and so hum log kya hai?
Right. I mean, in your case, the other side of your personality, outside of you being a filmmaker, is you're equally a film buff, and to a point where it would be a dream come true for you for the number of things that have happened to you as a result. I mean, I would love it was for you to meet Tarantino, for instance, or how was it for you to meet Scorsese? I mean, he would be God for you. What was it like when you first met him?
I had the funniest story when I first met Scorsese. So like I finally got this request wanting to see Gangs of Wasseypur. And I was like so jealous because I couldn't travel at that time. And Guneet was traveling to New York. So I gave Guneet a copy of the film. And she is like, okay, she said I dropped it at his house. I was so jealous because I thought it was my opportunity to meet him. And she went to his house and dropped the film. And I missed that opportunity. And then one day the letter comes in the mail. And that letter like totally blew me. I was like, I framed that letter. And the letter came in the mail. I not just copied it, I enlarged it. I made it such a big one and framed it and hung it on my wall. And I was so proud of it for the longest time. I didn't want to reveal it for the longest time. It was just in my office. Then I got a call inviting me to a jury by him. So in the sense, that's the first time I met him. So when I met him on the jury, and he had not walked in, and I only knew in that jury, I knew Fatih Akin personally. And he had come in, and I was so nervous. So I said, I'll just smoke and come back on the table. Because in that jury was suddenly Mario Cotillard. In that jury was Golshifteh Farhani, Park Chan-wook. So, but I didn't know Park Chan-wook by face. So I was spent in a corner and I was smoking a cigarette, and this man with long flowy hair comes and joins me and starts smoking a cigarette. And he's like, man, I can't believe it. We're meeting Martin Scorsese. And I was like, yeah, man. And he introduced himself and he was Paulo Sorrentino. 2 years later, he won the Academy Award for his movie, Best Foreign Film. So Sorrentino and me was smoking in a corner. I didn't know who Sorrentino was. And we were smoking in a corner, nervous because Scorsese is supposed to come in. And he comes in and the whole table goes silent. So me and Mario Cotillard or Fatih Akin, we were all equals when Scorsese sat down on his table. We were all there because of him. We were all looking at him. There was Amata Escalante.
Which festival was this?
This is in Marrakesh. That's how we all became friends. And he was just so amazing, and he was just so generous, and he was so open. And we were the first people to see the first ever cut of Wolf of Wall Street, because he was in the jury, heading the jury, and Wolf of Wall Street had was fighting its censor battle. So before the film got cut by little bit, he showed us only the jury got to see the full movie, uncut movie. Some of those scenes didn't make it to the final cut. He organized a special screening for just 13 of us. 10 of us sitting in a hall, saw the entire uncut Wolf of Wall Street. So it was such an amazing time. This is the year Wolf of Wall Street came out. Just 2 weeks later, it came out. I've had some amazing experiences. I've had I remember first time I met Coppola, and I saw him and I was looking at him, and he knew I wanted to talk to him. So he called me like this old man. He was sitting in one place, and Sofia Coppola was with him. His daughter was there with him, and he's old. And he made me sit in his lap and said, now talk to me. So I was like, it's like a grandfather putting you in his lap and saying, bolo kya bolna hai. I've had some incredibly beautiful experiences. They're just so personal that, I don't want to corrupt them.
Right. Did you have this? Did you have a similar, sort of experience when you moved to Bombay? Given that you were a film buff to begin with, or was Bollywood something very different from how you perceived world cinema to be in the first place?
We will never forget people who were nice and kind and warm to you at a time like this. I cannot forget. I remember when I was literally on the street, when I would be late and could not get into Xavier's to sneak into Imtiaz Ali's hostel room, I would spend my time on the street. At that time, I remember Sanjana Kapoor knew that I was doing theater, and I was the only person allowed to use Prithvi as my toilet in the morning. Like I could go to Prithvi and do that. I cannot forget that. The first person who was warmest and kindest to me was Shashi Kapoor. Because I remember my moment when I first time performed at Prithvi. I'd come from Delhi with a play, as part of a play with a one dialogue role. I had one dialogue I had to speak. So when I walked into Prithvi and I had my entry, I would wait for my entry, and my entry came, and I went to speak my line, and I was supposed to take the light and stand on the line. So when I took the light, in front of me was Shashi Kapoor sitting there, and I saw him and I forgot my line. I totally forgot my line. I blanked out. The actor handled the scene, and after that, he was so warm to me. Yes, Johar. I just cannot forget those people who are like just little tiny gestures. So those are the people who you remember. I've had moments like that. I remember very desperately. I remember once I trolled somebody when there was no social media. Terrible trolling that I did. That was horrible. I called Mukul Anand was making Trimurti, and I wanted to work with him as an assistant. And that was the time for landline. They were not in mobile phones. So I would call his house. Somebody would pick up. I said, Mukul Anand ji se baat ho sakti hai? I said, nahi. वो अभी busy है. बाद में phone करिए. And फिर I'll call again. Every call was 1 rupee coin, right? And so called again the second time. Third time I was like, Timo, मतलब सुभाष गाई बोल रहा हूँ. बोलना कल से सेट पाने की जरूरत नहीं है. And I put the phone down. So now when on social media I get trolled or somebody does things to me, I just remember of my time and I laugh.
Also, like personally for you, Anurag, I mean, you are a writer, a director, and I'm presuming the sense I get is that you actually got into films or got into even direction primarily first being a writer. And that's something that you were inclined towards even during school and even later, and you were writing stories, I'm presuming. After all these years, and I mean, we all know the film buff side of you, but if you had to pick one profession, let's say there were, if you had to pick one profession and you had no other choice, you would be a director or a writer. Which of the two would you pick up?
I would rather be a director, because as a director, I take liberty. See, now I'm working with scripts with other people. Like I have script with Nihit Bhave, Kanika Dhillon, and also Vineet when he came with Mukkabaz. They feel secure with me to let me take their script and interpret it my way, and they stand with me. So throughout the process, and I enjoy that process. I would rather be a director because if I like somebody's story, I can give it a shape alongside, not totally take total liberty with them, sitting with them, with their permission, with their collaboration, and change the script. So I would choose to be a director.
Was it after Bombay Velvet, if I'm not mistaken, Anurag, that you actually put out a social media post saying, hey guys, if you have a script, give it to me? Because before, it was almost given that if you are writing is when you are directing, you hadn't worked on anyone else's script in any case. Is that correct?
No, I used to, I have worked with ideas of other people. I have collaborated with other people. Like Gangs of Wasseypur came out from the idea of Zishan Kadri. And I collaborated with writers on that. I collaborated on Bombay Velvet with writers. But yeah, it was always something that I was in. It was organic process of start to finish that I was there. But last 3 films, I've taken a script that is already written and have more objectivity on their script, including Sacred Games, and worked on that. So all the Sacred Games, Man Marziyan, Ghost Stories, Mukkabaz, and now Choked. It's all other people's writing that I take, and I take liberty on that, and they give me that kind of a faith and freedom.
Man Marziyan. Now, when you got onto that film, a good portion, I think for 10 days of the shoot had already happened. The film had already been shot with a different director, with different actors, right? How was that like for you as a creative professional to enter a scene so late in the day, like completely as a professional director rather than a writer-director?
It was not very difficult because the earlier film had been shelved. And they asked me a question: would you like to see because they first gave me the script without saying anything. Like Anand Rai reached out to me, says, "I want to send you something to read. Tell me if you like it or not." I said, "For what?" He said, "No, just to read." He didn't ask me that will you direct it or not. I reacted very strongly to the character of Rumi. I said, the girl's character is what attracts me in the film. They asked me, "Karega?" He says, "मैंने कहा हो नहीं रहा." He says, "नहीं, वो तो खत्म हो गई, shelve हो गई. We spend a lot of money on it." I said, "If I will do it, then I will do it my way, the way I do a fresh film. I'll cast my own. I'll do music on my own. I will not use anything from the old film. I don't even want to see the old film." He was okay with it. I thought, why would he be okay with it? And he was very okay with it. He said, "देखो जो करना है कर, मैं कुछ भी नहीं बोलूंगा." So I did that. So I literally recast the film. My thing was like, I wanted to, the way I do about my casting, I said, I need a girl who is Punjabi in the first place. I don't want to work with a girl who's a non-Punjabi to make a film that's set in Punjab. I think earlier it was Ayushmann Khurrana, Bhumi and Vicky. And I spoke to Vicky, and I was looking at a film as a younger film first. So I was looking for younger actresses. I said, I'll make it a younger film. So when I spoke to Vicky, because Vicky had worked with me, and Vicky says, "Sir, आप ये film कर रहे हो, ये वो सारा क्या हो रहा है?" I said, "See, Vicky, I'm making it a younger film. So if I make it a younger film, you have to do the older role. But let me first figure it out who I am, because until I don't find Rumi, I can't cast the film. I need to find Rumi first." And we chased a lot of younger actors. I sent the script to younger established actors. I tried newcomers. I spent a lot of time with Sania Malhotra, like thinking of her, this, that, everything. It just somehow things were not working out. I accidentally met Taapsee Pannu and met her on a flight where she was very formal. So my perception of her was a very formal person. I was traveling with my daughter, and she was traveling, and she looked like a very quiet, formal person. None of the Rumi in her. She is also Kanika Dhillon's very good friend. So one day Kanika and Taapsee were hanging out with me, and that was a different Taapsee. I was totally blown. I took Kanika aside. I said, "ये तो है Rumi. This is what you want." He said, "But आपको तो छोटी चाहिए." मैंने कहा, "स्क्रिप्ट चेंज करो, हम बड़ी कर देंगे इसको." And then we started rewriting the script. So we called Taapsee, and then when Taapsee came on board, then I called Vicky. I said, "हम लोग Taapsee के साथ करें. Now you get to play the younger role. We need to find the older guy now." So that's how the process is. For me, it's always like choked. It was first important to find Sarita. Till I don't get Sarita, I can't do any other casting. So everything will be based around that. So that has been the casting process like that.
Anurag, a lot of people who've been on this, who have worked with you in the past as actors, who've been on this podcast, they've spoken about your direction process. And I mean, frankly, if there was someone who was not really an amazing actor and knew their chops, like from start to finish, they would not be able to survive your process. You don't say cut apparently, and you don't say action apparently. Nobody knows when you're going to stop a particular scene. It can just go on and on and on, where the actors don't have their lines ready with them, or they could have been lines on that day itself. Is there a template that you've sort of developed over years, or is somebody whose works you've admired and taken some elements of that from there?
No. This is something that I have refined over the years now. Now this is the way I work. But when it started, it was not having any other choice but to do it this way, because we had no money when we were making Panch or Black Friday or Gulal. When we were shooting Gulal, we were like constantly trying to find places that were lit enough so that whatever we shoot will be seen. So we were dependent on people lighting up their own homes in Diwali, and we were shooting there. So we had to improvise the scene based on that. So every scene would change itself. Black Friday, we had no money to go and shoot, in the sense we had a budget given, and I wanted to shoot it authentically. I can't just randomly shoot in my street and say, "Believe this is Javeri Bazaar." We had to go shoot there. I've had to figure out constantly how to shoot to make it look big and authentic. One thing I'd learned, if your low budget films looks low budget, nobody's going to pay attention. So while watching the film, people can't say, "Isme to kharcha nahi kiya." So I have developed the style, and then I've refined it over the years. And it works for me very well. And also, having been very bad actor on screen in my early days has taught me how to direct actors and how to get the best out of them. And it's very important for them to trust me. Actors have to totally put their trust in me. Otherwise, I can't extract performances. If they doubt me, then it becomes a very scary process for me, because my process is scary for somebody who doesn't know. But if you ask my team, they enjoy the process so much, they never want to go back to the normal filmmaking. So every actor and everybody who works there They don't like going back to the normal world.
How can you have a conversation with Anurag Kashyap and not bring up Bombay Velvet? It has to become part of some conversation in some form or the other. And I have to tell you this, Anurag. I happened to watch the film again quite recently, and maybe the first time I watched it was so much about the plot, and I was just like looking at Nariman Point and when will you get to that element of the plot. But this time I watched it like Scarface. And for me, it's the same Miami, and it's the same, the Art Deco architecture of Miami. A man comes to town, a stranger comes to town, and his rise, as it were. Were you deeply inspired by Scarface when you were thinking of, or when you're writing, or when you're filming Bombay Velvet?
I think there's a lot of influence of everything from Scarface to a lot of early cinema, White Heat, and all those movies were the big influence. What's his name? Edward Robinson was a big influence. And Scarface, not the new one, but the old one. That was a big influence.
The Paul Mooney Scarface.
The Paul, yeah. So all those things were a big influence on that. And we wanted to create noir and art deco. But every building we recreated, everything was based on real buildings that existed in Bombay. So it was all those things combined with the story of Nariman Point. Built around, you need something to build the story around. So a lot of facts and things, because Bombay used to have these boxing rings and all those things. But I think it's because such an immediate history and such a short period of time, there's no relatability for people. And expectation from the film was just far too much. There's too much media attention, interest, put everybody on a back foot. It's still a nightmare.
But of the things that the film managed to achieve, which is a lot of what your films tend to do, is it became a bunch of memes. It became a conversation piece. It became a talking point. I'm going to finish this conversation with a few things that have become talking points. And if you could remember, if there are any stories behind those things, Anurag. One is the one thing that we all remember when we think of Dev D, for instance, is emotional atyachar. It's a line. It's these two words that you came up with. Do you remember how you came up with those two words? Because they sort of define that film in a real sense.
Yeah, there's a story behind it. Because that song, Pardesi, the song, there's a line called Ipke Hoge Agge Yaar. So there's a line in the song. So he made me hear that song. I heard it like Ipke Hoge Atyachar. Agge Yaar sounded like Atyachar to me. So Atyachar stayed in my head. And I was trying to figure out a song, and Atyachar stayed in my head. So, and I was in that phase where I was telling Amit Trivedi that Paella, by God, add that by God to it. So I asked him to do that. So that Agge Yaar, and then I remember that I heard it as Atyachar, and he told me it's Agge Yaar, but Atyachar was playing in my head, and I was lying in bed, and suddenly emotional Atyachar just occurred to me. It was 11 p.m. And I called up Amit. I said, just write down this word, emotional Atyachar. This is what? I said, just write it down. I want a song around it. I'll tell you what. Just write it down. And he wrote emotional Atyachar. And I said, and then from emotional Atyachar, I went back to my memory of Kamal Swaroop's Om Darbadar, where the song was Meri Jaan A, Meri Jaan B, Meri Jaan C. And that song influenced me so much that earlier I wanted to use that brass band element in Gulal, which I did not end up using, which we only used a little bit on Piyush Mishra. He's always dressed like a bandmaster. And there's some elements that you have always wanted to use because it impacted you. Also Underground, Amir Kusturika's Underground, because he constantly plays with the band and that whole opening sequence. I wanted to use that. So it started with using this band element, and we had started shooting. So all those things I said band ka record karna, emotional atyachar gana hai. Baki you figure it out. Baki it was Amitav and Amit. I did not do more than that. I said brass band, emotional atyachar.
The other one that everyone talks about is from Gangs of Wasseypur. And it's about, obviously, that most famous line now is, tumse na ho paega. Is there a story behind that?
No, there's no story. It's the beautiful delivery of Tigmanshu Dhulia. It's such a beautiful delivery of Tigmanshu Dhulia. He just simplifies it so much. I said, better tumse na ho paega. It's a very Allahabadi. I'm saying there's a lot of credit that's been given, but literally the credit for that line goes to Tigmanshu Dhulia.
Keh ke lunga?
Keh ke lunga, again, the same thing. It's a gibberish. Because what happens is a lot of songs we record in gibberish when we are trying to find music. So the gibberish that went, when she was recording the song, it went like Kengel lunga. So Sneha was recording the way songs should be in gibberish. So that gibberish became Kengel lunga. I said Kengel lunga nahi, Keh ke lunga. And Keh ke lunga came from that gibberish, became Keh ke lunga. So it was the song that came first, and then I incorporated that in the script, and it became a dialogue. And I called Piyush Mishra. I said, "कह के लूँगा song, आप ही लिख सकते हो."
Talking of scenes, because we're wrapping up, if I have to think of one of the greatest scenes that you've done, Anurag, it would be from Black Friday, and it would be the chase sequence, going fast, going slow. Is there a story behind the chase sequence in Black Friday that you can remember?
Yeah, it was just. I remember I was shooting arrests. There's a whole chapter on the arrests of the people who were accused. So after shooting the third arrest, I was like, यार it's too repetitive. पुलिस आते हैं, कुछ कर रहे होते हैं, अभी मैं कितना अलग सोचूंगा. But we had to show, what is very important was to show that what part of the city these people came from. So I said, instead of showing every individual arrest, to show what part of the world they came from, let's shoot a chase sequence in that world. Through the chase, we see the lives they live in. Through the chase, we see the tiredness of the police. Because the stories were both sides. Or police was tired, कोई निकल जाता था, हाथ से कोई पकड़ा जाता था. So instead of shooting 10 different or 12 different scenes, I made it one scene which had everything. So we shot on those difficult places where they lived. So you saw people living on the nala, on the pipe, and the chase across, and how how Bandra West to East it connects, and how people kind of run through, and just seeing the mass of people that is there. So that chase became a kind of a metaphor for every arrest and the police's exhaustion of it. So that's how the thing was. But that came after shooting 4 arrest sequence, and I couldn't find any more new idea to show an arrest.
Thank you, Anurag. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
સબસ્ક્રાઇબ કરો ગુજરાતી મિડ ડે. બેલ આઇકોન પર ક્લિક કરીને મેળવો તમામ વિડીયોના ડાયરેક્ટ નોટિફિકેશન.